Having the losing team sucks as an ADC. Even if you're doing well, it won't matter if the fed enemy assassin or bruiser ever comes near you. They'll just instantly one-shot you. As a marksman, you also don't get to have much impact in the game early on, so it's infuriating to see messages like these before you're even out of the laning phase. You haven't even been able to do anything yet, but your team is already tilting. Having to deal with losing teams is something you're going to have to learn to manage, but don't worry. In this guide, you're going to learn some of the best tactics you can utilize as an ADC to hard carry bad teammates. We'll be taking a look at a diamond elo game of our challenger expert Hector, where he's smurfing on misfortune. While he crushed the laning phase, amassing a big lead, his master's elo Kassadin, who definitely doesn't deserve to be in such a low elo game, fed kill after kill to the enemy Vladimir. You've all faced a fed Vlad before, so you know Hector is not in for a good time. Nevertheless, with proper macro, Hector is going to make this diamond lobby look completely bronze and take over the game on his own, and you're about to learn how you can as well. And that's because teaching you how to carry horrible teammates is kind of our whole thing at skillcapped.com. With premium courses for every role and skill taught by the best players, Skillcapped is the perfect platform to help take your game to the next level. Take our AD carry course on how to carry in low elo. We teach you a super effective strategy that lets you climb ranks fast as a marksman. Players just like you are leaving 5-star reviews raving about how this course actually helped them climb. Or maybe you want something super simple to execute, then you'll love our course on the most brain-dead strategy for AD carry that actually works. One of our website subscribers hit diamond using this strategy with a 70% win rate and became the rank 9 Sivir in North America. Still don't believe us? Well, the best part is it's completely risk-free to try, as you're kept safe with our rank up insurance. If you don't significantly improve while actively using SkillCap, then you get your money back, no questions asked. So what are you waiting for? Get the rank you've always wanted by clicking the link in the description below. Alright, now let's get into it. Okay, so as we've said, Hector's team isn't doing so well. Top lane is fine, but his mid and jungle are having a pretty rough game. As a result, Hector has to deal with some pretty scary dive coming his way as an immobile ADC. Jarvan ult plus a fed Vladimir is not going to be fun to deal with. Not only that, but his team is probably going to give Jinx free resets and fights, so this is not going to be an easy game. However, Hector is a very bright spot for his team, which brings us to one of the most important things you can do when you're ahead, despite your teammates doing poorly. If you think about natural lane allocations during the mid game, then the side laners will be catching the waves in top and bottom. Meanwhile, the ADC and support settle into mid lane. You can kind of see that happening in the game. Hector is sitting in mid, while his Kassadin and Ornn farm top and bot. What does this mean for you? Well, your side laners may be getting pushed in and conceding priority if they're losing. That being said, if you're winning, you can still fight heavily for mid priority. The value of having the push in mid far outweighs the value of having the push in side lanes. Mid has the quickest access to both objectives and the best ward spots in the game. This means that by enabling your support to move, you're giving your team solid vision on the map even if overall your team is losing. Likewise, having mid priority also prevents the enemy support from getting those same wards. That vision advantage cannot be underestimated. Not only that, but by having the first move, you're also relieving pressure from your side laners who are losing. If you're always threatening to come in and save the day, it makes it very difficult for the fed enemy carries to keep stomping your teammates. This is one way to stabilize and take control of the map, despite having the worst team. Hector fought very aggressively for mid priority and then moved into the river. This forced the fed enemy Vladimir to back off from pressuring Kassadin. Not only that, but it's enabling his support to get vision control over the area for the upcoming dragon, as we discussed. Off of this rotation, a big moment is about to happen, so listen up. The enemy Jinx tries to contest in the area, and Hector abuses his lead to easily push her off. With the enemy team super out of position now, Hector has a clear window to take the mid tower for free on this wave. It's clear to any of you that this is guaranteed to go down, but Hector immediately clicks off it to go to dragon. Let's break down why. The mid tier 1 tower is by far the most important tower in the game to break. It prevents a lot of enemy engages, allows you to contest mid priority, prevents deep enemy vision, etc. It's a really important structure, and taking it down as quickly as possible is one of the most impactful things you can do to win a game. Despite how important it is, Hector cared way more about dragon, which is a bit odd. This is because when playing from behind, you have to deal with the inevitability of your opponents getting Baron and Dragon Soul. The individual dragons give nice stats, but everyone knows the real threat is the actual soul. In fact, it's incredibly unlikely you ever win if the enemy team gets it. Not only is the buff powerful, but it immediately demoralizes your team. When no one thinks you'll win anymore, you guys know how everyone on your team just stops trying or forfeits the second you lose the soul, right? Which brings us back to Hector's decision. We're about to throw some math your way, but sit tight, it'll all make sense in a moment. There are 5 minutes in between every dragon spawn. On average, most champions in the game earn somewhere around 350 gold or so per minute. So this is the average gold earned by most players in between every dragon spawn. Then you multiply that by 5 for all 5 players on the team. Basically, on average, teams earn nearly 9,000 gold in between every dragon spawn. Don't worry, the exact number doesn't really matter. What does matter is the concept behind delaying the eventual dragon soul fight. If you don't contest any dragons, then the winning team can get to soul at around 25 minutes. You will be forced to fight at this timing or you lose the game anyway. Problem is, a deficit of like 8k at 25 minutes is absolutely unplayable, and you're very likely to lose the fight. But if you delay that inevitable fight by 5 minutes, you'd be fighting at the same deficit, but at larger gold values. This means that the difference in power is relatively smaller, giving you a much higher chance of winning. Basically, the more dragons you take, the more you delay the soul fight, which means your eventual desperation fight has a much higher chance of succeeding. Now, Hector's decision should make sense to most of you. Yes, the mid tower is important, but his main goal this game is to get his Ornn and Kassadin to scale up. Delaying the dragon soul by 5 minutes would be a massive win in that regard. So to recap how he got here, Hector fought very aggressively for mid priority with his lead. He used that priority to get vision control over the area. This gave them a positional advantage over the enemy bot lane, which turned into a ton of immediate mid pressure. The enemy team panicked to try and defend mid, which gave Hector and his team a small but valuable window to sneak the dragon without having to fight the stronger team. Hector is making the map his plaything by pushing with proper rotations, and what do his teammates do in response? Well, Ornn and his support just die, greeting for the tower. Great. Now, Hector's got another fire to put out, because they're now 3v5 and out of position. The enemy team throws down Herald in mid and prepare to push down multiple towers. As he finally loops back around to defend his base, Hector's met with a pretty grim looking situation. Now, the simple move to make here is to just not do anything. In fact, you'd actually prefer if your opponents take your inhibitor with this push. It's only 18 minutes, so they'd just be funneling a ton of gold to you and your teammates. Losing early inhibitors is not bad. It's generally good for your team. But Hector is a challenger player with an ego and thinks he can outplay this. So here's what he does, and what you can do to hard carry games as well. He knows Jarvan and Vladimir are right in front of him, but he still offers himself up as juicy bait to be engaged on. But notice his mouse. He's already behind himself ready to disengage. So when Jarvan combos forward, he sidesteps the engage and the fight begins. This is a very powerful team fighting tactic as any ADC. Everyone on the enemy team is always gunning to kill you. So what you can do is be in range of the main engage of your opponents and bait them to go in on you. Generally, this works best when you have some sort of mobility tool to outplay and disengage with. If you foil your opponent's engage, this puts them incredibly out of position and in the middle of your entire team, while their own team is still lagging behind, unable to help. This is the exact same concept Hector is using here. Notice that after Jarvan misses EQ and ult, Hector flashes backwards. Now pause and look at this conga line the enemy team has got going on. They're super disjointed. Meanwhile, Hector just kited back towards his own team. Notice how everyone is linked up and ready to focus Jarvan and Vladimir. Despite the great start, the fight is still tough because of how far behind they are. But because of how awkward their engage was, the enemy team doesn't make anything happen and begins scrambling to try to disengage and get out. This gives Ornn enough time to respawn, and he comes in to completely turn things around. Eventually, Hector cleans the fight up and has managed to turn the game on its head. As an ADC main, it can be quite frustrating to deal with how easily you can die every single game. Everyone on the enemy team knows how frail you are, so they're always gunning for you. But one of the most fun and best ways of carrying is learning to play on the edge and abusing that tunnel vision that the enemy team always has towards killing you. Learning when you can bait a fight like this one can give you way more tools to carry your own games to start climbing much more easily. Anyway, after that last team fight, Hector's team is still technically behind, but he is well poised to carry. Having 3 full items at 20 minutes is definitely enough power to 1v9 most games, regardless of how useful your team is. So, what's the first thing Hector does? Again, he uses his strength to establish mid priority. As we've discussed, this is one of the best things you can do in any game. As that happens, pay attention on the minimap. His Ornn is trying to 1v1 Vladimir, which is literally not even possible. His teammate is just trolling out of their mind, and it's no shock that he's being collapsed on by the enemy jungler. So let's take a quick moment to test your skills. What would you do if you saw the situation, and why? If you spend a ton of time watching our guides, then you probably immediately thought about cross-mapping. You should know that if the enemy team commits multiple members to one side of the map, that you can often trade somewhere else. In this case, Hector could push mid with this wave, or perhaps even rotate towards bottom to try and kill Shen and push. This makes it so Ornn's death isn't meaningless. That's the simple option though. Something we don't discuss that often is that you can actually look to collapse to your caught-out teammate if you consider 2 things. First is asking yourself how quickly they'll die. So, for example, a Syndra caught out by an assassin assassin in a side lane is going to die nearly instantly. You won't have time to get there before she's dead. The second thing to consider is how fast you rotate to the fight as well. Let's say you got an enchanter who can constantly speed you up and you're playing a wall hopping ADC. It's much more likely that you'll get there in time if you can rotate pretty quickly. In this specific case, Ornn is a massive tank being ganked by two low DPS champions. Likewise, Hector is playing Misfortune, the fastest ADC in the game at rotating around the map. This is important, so listen up. Cross-mapping is definitely good, but the problem is that it generally leads to a neutral outcome. You're just canceling out your teammate dying by making a play somewhere else. You don't actually come out that far ahead in a lot of cases. Rotating, on the other hand, is very effective. You're flipping a teammate's bad play into a good one and your opponent's good play into a bad one. If you get there in time and turn the fight, it is a much bigger swing than a cross-map play would ever be. And with that snap decision, Hector has now completely turned the game around. Eventually, those two kills lead to Baron, and now it's Hector and crew who are in control and poised to win the game. So, what's Hector's next brilliant move to snowball the situation? He gets absurdly cocky and runs it down mid entirely by himself. Then he reminds us why he's a macro, not a mechanical challenger player, and misplays versus Jarvan's engage. He's completely thrown a 1k shutdown to Jinx and all of his team's momentum. Nice. And check out this challenger analysis afterwards. It was not a bad call to be there, just a silly mechanical misplay, obviously. What a great lesson there. And of course, his teammates are inspired by his bravery and decide to throw their lives away as well. Ornn goes down in bottom and Kassadin hands over a shutdown and 10 Magi's stacks up in top. And Hector's back at square one due to his mistake. Hector blowing his flash like an idiot is going to prove to be a big problem, so we'll explain it while he paths to red buff. You can see he's kind of debating whether he should take it or not. This is a good lesson. Red buff is a very powerful, slow, and sustained tool later into the game. The duration is only 2 minutes though. Notice how Hector pressed tab, and there's no important objectives to fight over anytime soon. This is why he's hesitating to take it. In this case, it is definitely worth saving the red buff for later and just letting it sit here. However, he doesn't trust his diamond elo Vi to not take it, so he just grabs it. This leads to this next moment. He is making a point about how useless the red is, since he can't even contest mid priority without flash. As an immobile ADC with no mobility, you can never contest the mid wave safely versus champions with any form of decent engage. In this specific game, Jarvan has way too easy of a time EQing into ult, letting Shen jump in as well, which is a guaranteed death. So Hector has to play all the way back here, which definitely sucks. Remember that the only reason he's in this game is because he's been heavily prioritizing the mid push to have control over the map. That is, until he sees Jinx and Lulu top. It may seem small, but at a higher level, that is a game-losing mistake by the enemy ADC, and Hector capitalizes on it by moving forward and beginning to push. This is one of those key differences between Challenger and Diamond players. A really good Jinx would instantly recognize that Hector can't contest mid priority and instead play for it herself. She'd have a ton of pressure on the map and allow her teammates to establish vision control in the area. Instead, she's just farming up in top. To understand why this is so awful, let's switch it over to the enemy team's perspective. Like we said, the map should not look like this. Jinx and Lulu should have been controlling the mid area for vision, but instead everything is dark. After Hector pushed that wave in mid, they have absolutely zero idea what he's up to at the moment. At any point in time, Misfortune can come out anywhere on the map and start pressuring. You can see that Jarvan and Vladimir are guessing that Hector's team is going for Baron control and kind of start moving towards there, but MF comes out of nowhere in bot. Like we said, they had no idea what to expect, and that's what Hector was playing for. He was just shadowing his Kassadin and waiting to see what the enemy team did. When he saw Jarvan and Vladimir on the wrong side of the map, that was basically game over. Once again, he's caused extreme chaos on the map by having the first move over his opponents. They have to scramble to try and defend their base. Shen panics and desperately tries to protect the inhibitor tower, only to get instantly killed. Now they can easily take the bot lane inhibitor once Hector's team collapses to the play. After taking it, Hector wanted to play for Baron, but his Ornn finds a randomly insane engage, and from there, it's just easy pickings for how fed Hector is at this point. He just runs down the entire enemy team and collects a well-deserved win. To recap, here's the most important lessons from that game. The value of mid priority cannot be overstated in solo queue. Having vision control over the mid area and having the first move to any fight or objective is absolutely priceless and can let you completely dominate a map even when your teammates aren't doing that well. Also, when playing from behind, you have to think long-term about how you're going to turn a game around. It's not always possible, but it was clear that Hector had a long-term insurance plan by securing this dragon. Denying soul for 5 extra minutes can often be the deciding factor in whether you're able to come back or not. And finally, everyone knows how frail and susceptible to death ADCs are, but you can often abuse that tunnel vision that enemy players have towards killing you. Don't be afraid of using yourself as bait, especially when you have mobility spells to deny and engage. Playing on the edge of death can often be what allows you to dictate how a teamfight begins and ultimately how it ends in your favor. And remember, if you want to improve fasting at the rank you've always wanted, then go to skillcap.com. Our service is completely risk-free as you're kept safe with rank up insurance. So what are you waiting for? Get the rank you've always wanted by clicking the link in the description below. Alright, that's a wrap on this one, guys. We here at SkillCap want to thank you for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.